Everyone. So welcome to the video for the PowerPoints for module number 1, introduction to the course. So let me share my screen and we shall begin. Okay, and I'm going to go full screen. So again, welcome to Theories of Personality. This module, which is 2 weeks long, is going to kind of just introduce ourselves to the concepts in the course. So let's start off by explaining, well, what does this class entail? So let's break down the title of this course. So again, the title is Theories, plural, of Personality. So essentially, there are a lot of different descriptions that explains one's personality. So let's start off by describing in this class how we're going to define that term. Because what's tricky is we're familiar with this term. This term is used quite a bit throughout our day and is very familiar for people, even those who are not familiar with psychology or the social sciences. So how we're going to define personality in this class is a personality is a person's or one's psychological mechanisms that promotes patterns of emotions. So that's feelings, cognitions, that's thoughts, and behaviors, that's actions. So essentially, it is what uh, entails or influences how one feels, how one acts, and how one thinks. And so everyone can have different mechanisms that promotes those elements. And as we'll talk about in module number 2, the situation can influence how one thinks, how one acts, and how one feels. So really, essentially, to give a more broader definition, personality essentially explains the psychological makeup of an individual. So with this class, we're really focusing on the person rather than groups or societies or cultures, but really what makes up the person, what is their internal world, what's their thoughts, what's their feelings, and what's their behavior. So now that we've discussed how we're going to find personality, let's look at what we mean by theory. So theories can be empirical, so that's like your science, your laboratory tests, your measurements, like a psychological personality quiz. So like some paper and pencil. So we have theories can be science-based and also philosophical based. So as we go along this class, 2 examples, an empirically based theory would be trait theory. Trait theory has a lot of rigor, has been done in laboratory settings, has been replicated, and can be measured through personality assessments. So if you've ever taken a personality assessment, most likely that was based off trait theory. Trait theory is essentially how one describes who they are. Um, Now, philosophically based system, a good example of that, as we'll talk about, existential psychology. So existentialism is a philosophy system, and existential psychology takes the philosophy system and applies it to how one's thoughts, feelings, and behaviors can be impacted by meaning, lack of meaning, fear, anxiety, isolation, and even thoughts of death can impact our thoughts, our feelings, and our actions. So really, we use these systems as a blueprint to help explain how one's personality is developed and how also one can grow and change their personality. So theories, again, is like a blueprint to help explain that process. So the thing to remember with theories is it helps us understand, predict, and influence growth and development of people. So a lot of these theories, they're going to give some sort of description of the makeup of one's personality. And with that description, we try to understand how something was created and how it's maintained. And if we know how it's created and how it's maintained, and then we can kind of predict what's going to happen. And with that, we can also influence and promote change and growth. So we're going to talk more about that, especially when we enter the clinical theories. The clinical theories have a good description of how personality is developed and how personality is can grow and change. So thing to note real quick. So some researchers use the term approach. In this context, approach and theory are synonymous. So the Funder text, Funder uses the word approach quite a bit, and understand that approach and theory are essentially, we're talking about the same thing. As we get into clinical theories, you also may hear a clinical orientation. That just means what theory you resonate with the most. So with this class, these are the questions we're going to try to answer. First, what makes up a person's psychology? And again, the theories are going to help give some framework and description to help us come to a conclusion with that question. Really, why are people different and unique? Everyone is going to have different traits, different experiences, and different personality components can be expressed differently depending on the context and situation. In addition, when we get to clinical theories, especially psychodynamics, psychodynamics really emphasizes that the environment we grew up in, whether the family, the social context, historical context, all those various elements in our childhood development greatly influenced our personality as adults. We're going to explore what creates and fosters these differences. Can these differences be understood and measured? And how consistent are these differences? With this knowledge, really, can we predict how people behave? And finally, can we change behavior? So we're going to address that, especially in the clinical theories, but understand a more in-depth way to explore behavioral change is covered specifically in theories of psychotherapy and counseling. But we're just going to scratch the surface. So moving on next to this, the thing to remember with this class is understanding personality is not new to you. So throughout our daily life, we are trying to understand people in any interaction we have with them. So whenever we meet someone new, we're making some sort of assessments, whether we can trust them, work with them, be friends with them, be a new acquaintance, and maybe be in some sort of relationship with them as well. We're constantly trying to predict the future behaviors of others, and we typically do that by putting one in trait theory category. Is that person dependable? Can I trust them? Are they creepy? Are they funny? Are they interesting? Those are all trait components. So if you ever have a job interview or even going on a date or meeting someone new, you're using some sort of framework to understand and predict how that person's going to be. So that can be dating, politics, hiring individuals for jobs, and making new friends. Again, this is not new to you. We're just going to take that already kind of foundational element and build off those theories to give different perspectives and maybe a better understanding of how we try to understand others. So really, that leads us to, if we do this naturally, then why should we study it? Well, we study personality in two capacities. We're doing it to understand the other or other people, and we also learn personality to study ourselves. So if we start off with the study of the other, so observing other people and what makes them tick, how they behave, how they think and feel. So through the study of individuals, we develop the ability to understand why they behave the way they do, why they feel the way they feel, and why they think the way they think. So it can help us understand better empathy. It can also help us promote growth and change. It can also help us give us more meaning and make sense in sometimes behaviors that rationally just don't click. And a lot of times, as we'll talk about too, especially from psychodynamics, people are not necessarily logical sometimes, instead are more emotion based. And having just that framework can help us understand why people do things that sometimes don't make sense to us. So through that understanding, we can predict their future behavior and know that that can be beneficial. If we're hiring someone for a particular job, we want to know, can they complete this task? If we're meeting someone new in our life, are they someone we want in our life? Will they be, can we predict their future behavior, etc. So by knowing the why and the how of the behavior, we also have the ability to change the individual. And that's really kind of the emphasis of counseling and psychotherapy. Um, what I want to kind of say too is a lot of this information, you're throughout this course, you're going to explore and have a better understanding how people behave, act, and think. And the reality is, it's kind of makes you a little dangerous in a way. You have a lot of information that can influence other people's behavior. What I want to say with that is you have to be cautious. This is a 16-week class, and you're not going to be the expert of how to utilize these theories to promote growth and change. It would be a bad idea to think that you are an expert with this. Especially when we talk about clinical theories, it's important to understand that years of experience, training, and really in-depth supervision of applying those theories are required, because as I'll talk about, especially with the clinical theories, this stuff can backfire and can cause more harm than good if used appropriately. So understand that please don't try to change the personality of your partner, your family, your friend on this class alone. And also, um, as we'll talk about too, personality change really is more effective when the person whose personality change is needed wants to change. So don't try to force someone to change their personality through this class. So there, I kind of gave that disclaimer. So the other component of this is we're going to study ourselves. With this information, we can obviously apply it to our own lives. We can increase our personal awareness and insight to our behavior, because a lot of times our behaviors are unconscious, and we can understand why we are more prone to act in certain ways and certain awareness. The more awareness we have, the more choice we can make upon our behaviors. With this new awareness, again, we have the potential and choice to make alternatives to our behaviors. So really, a lot of the assignments are going to be geared toward the better understanding of yourself through reflections and applying this information with that. Okay, so with that being said, let's finish up with the course outline. So as I mentioned in the syllabus video, please I recommend reviewing that and looking over the syllabus. If you have any questions, please feel free to send me an email. So we're in module 1 right now. This is going to be 2 weeks long. The discussion and assignment are going to be due Sunday, September 12th at 11:59 p.m. I will send a reminder on Friday, the Friday before the 12th. And then we'll cover trait theories. And again, trait theories is essentially descriptions and adjectives of various personality components. And again, trait theories, you utilize trait theory on a constant basis. Whenever you're describing someone, you're using a trait theory. And I'm sure if you've taken a personality test, most likely it was utilizing trait theory. So that's going to be 2 weeks long. And within trait theory, we're going to discuss the situation versus trait debate. Is personality stable, or is one's personality greatly depending on the situation and context? It's kind of like the nature versus nurture argument. Module 3, that'll cover biology of personality. That's going to be 2 weeks long as well. And really, we're looking at how biological components, genetics, neurochemicals, brain, and anatomy can express and influence how one acts, feels, and behaves. So modules 1 through 3, again, that's kind of our empirical laboratory academic components. Funder, the writer of the textbook, that's his wheelhouse. And really, we're going to kind of view the science of personality from modules 1 through 3. When we enter module 4, that's going to be the start of the clinical theories. And the clinical theories is sometimes more art than science. And understand, if the behaviorist heard me say that, they would have a freak out. Behaviorists and cognitive theorists would disagree with that and say that they're more science than art. But really, the clinical theories, that's more how do we take this information that's done in a lab, done in a research setting, and how do we apply it to promote growth and change? So we'll start off with psychodynamics. That is classic theories such as Freudian or Sigmund Freud's psychoanalysis, Alfred Adler's individual psychology, and Carl Jung's analytical psychology. That stuff is very complex, and there's going to be a lot of information in those slides, but I'm going to try my best to make it accessible as much as I can. Then module 5 is our humanistic, existential, and positive psych theories. These are, psychodynamics was more looking at pathological personality components, and module 5 is more focusing on positive elements of it. Typically, your module 4 views humans as not good, maybe borderline evil, where module 5 views humans as inherently good. They have those potential to do that. Then we'll take a break for Thanksgiving, and then we'll come back with module 6, which for those in the social sciences and psychology disciplines, you already have a very good understanding of behaviorism, cognitive theories, and social learning. So we'll cover that in module number 6. And with those modules, those are essentially taking concepts we've learned in research settings and applying it, and essentially is really focusing on changing thoughts and behaviors depending on utilizing the environment, as well as questioning one's thoughts and using kind of Socratic questioning and addressing and promoting growth and change through targeting a specific personality trait. So we'll talk more about that in module 6. And so real quickly with the autobiography is a lot of these assignments are geared and built off to prepare you for the final autobiography. So all of these assignments are somehow connecting to your own personality, laying the groundwork to be applied to your final autobiography. So I'd recommend, probably by week, let's say module 3, to have some sort of good understanding of what you may want to write about, some sort of trait, personality characteristic, etc., and then applying those theories that we've talked about to help explain how the how the trait was developed, what maintains the trait, and how one would modify that trait if needed. So all these theories are going to address those components in one way or another. Okay, so I'm going to stop there. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you. Have a good day.